again, everyone. A few weeks ago, a question came up in a Facebook group that I'm in about working with the aura. There was some debate on this and the reasonings behind wanting to work with the aura, but I said I'd do some research about it, and I have. I thought it was an interesting topic because the aura is not something that I have really worked with much, which is a little bit strange considering, as I mentioned in my videos on, in my video on working with energy, basically how I view my sphere, my worldview, and magic is as kind of a web, an interactive web of energy. Given that, why have I not really researched auras much? I couldn't tell you, but I think based off of what I was able to find, what I did learn, I think it is also yet another thing I'm going to add to my study list. So I wanted to share with you what I found out about the aura and kind of give the information as I would to the person I was corresponding to on Facebook, because I do still have to answer them. I promised them the information. So as far as that goes, working with the aura, I think there are basically three steps on doing this. So if you want to create magic or energy work that deals with the aura, first and foremost, you're going to have to learn what the aura is. And for me, this involved a little bit of research because all I know about the aura, or all I knew about the aura, was it is your energy field, your own personal energy field. We all know about this to some extent. If you think about when somebody gets into your space, gets a little too close to you, especially a stranger, because with familial energy bubbles, it's a little bit more flexible. But when a stranger gets too close, you kind of, you know when they're too close. And so you can think of that as your little imaginary bubble. That is your aura, or your own personal energy field. Looking into it further, I did remember hearing something at some point in the past about the aura having layers. I believe Christopher Pensac may have mentioned this in his books, specifically The Inner Temple of Witchcraft, when he's talking about energy fields, and I can't remember how many layers he talks about. I do also know that the Farrars in a Witch's Bible, they mention layers to the energy field, but there's a little bit of a difference between Eastern and Western thought on this. So, Eastern thought is that the aura has 7 layers, and these layers correspond to the chakra system, so that each layer would have similar characteristics or similar areas of influence within that layer. Western Theosophy, if I'm saying that correctly, does also use this layered approach with the 7 layers. And that would make sense because much of Western Theosophy was based on, and I'm talking about the early work of, for example, I think Society of the Inner Light, Dion Fortune, which worked a lot with esoteric beliefs, and they, at the time, it was very popular to look into things from the East. It was when Egypt and the Orient were very popular. So they also used this view of 7 layers to the aura, but they have different correspondences to those layers. And in this version, the layers correspond more to the astral planes and I shouldn't say astral planes, but to astronomical correspondences, meaning the planets. And so each layer of the aura would have similar correspondences to similar areas of influence as those of the planets. And all of this would make sense to me because I like to think of things, I like to remember that everything is just a bigger version of something else. If we look at the tiniest thing that we know of, the atom, it acts like a little tiny solar system. So the atom is the tiniest version of our solar system, which then is even greater in the solar systems revolving around each other, and on into infinity. But we don't normally think of ourselves in that grand scheme of things. So with the aura, we can start to see ourselves as that little solar system. These different layers of our own personal energy correspond to us, inner and outer. They're connecting the two. And this is why the aura becomes very important. Because when you connect inner and outer, then anything you do to one will affect the other. So previously, when talking about energy work, I talked about intention and noting the energy around you. And I did kind of gloss on the fact that this energy is not just around, but also inside of you, or the individual. But that may or may not have given a good connecting factor. Because when I thought about it, I thought, well, energy moving through me, okay, I could recognize that as, okay, that is, but I could still conceptualize it as being somehow different from me. When we think of the aura, or when I think of the aura in these layers, that is kind of the glue that meshes, okay, this energy working around and through me is also in me, if that makes sense. This energy is a reflection of the energy in me. So, once you've established your belief on the aura, what it is, how it's constructed, how many layers it is, because I have also heard that it's, some people say it has 3 layers, or some people speak of it in terms of just 1 layer. So once you have done your research to find out what makes the most sense to you about the aura, the next thing you have to do when wanting to work with it is to learn to recognize it. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean viewing the aura. I've never seen an aura myself. I had a friend who was gifted at that, but I never have myself. And to this particular part of learning, I would say it might be easiest to first start with energy work to establish where do you feel energy around yourself. And again, I refer a lot to Christopher Pensack. I love his books. I also refer a lot to the Farrars because their Witch's Bible is literally my Bible. I love this book. But Pensack has energy exercises that include recognizing the aura. And you can, it's probably best to do this with a partner because it might be hard to distinguish on yourself. But basically, you have 2 people standing away from each other, arms out, and they come closer to each other until they can feel the energy field around each other. And this is very similar to the exercise of feeling energy itself, feeling where energy expands and contracts. So it's the same idea, but working on a bigger level. Once you're able to feel that outer layer of the aura, you can experiment with pushing beyond that and seeing if there's a different feel for additional layers or not, and see how that correlates to what you had come up with in your research on what you believe might be the best explanation of the auras. This all takes time. So learning to recognize the aura is not going to be a quick thing. And once you've learned to feel the energy of the aura, or concurrently, you may also want to work on being able to view the aura. And the reason I have the Farrar's book here is because in the healing section of A Witch's Bible, It's the second portion that was originally published as The Witch's Way. The Farrars do go into a pretty in-depth explanation of their experience with auras. So it runs from, in my version here, page 227 to 232, and I would suggest taking a look at that if you're interested in learning how to view the aura. They talk about it a little bit, and they talk about a person, a physician by the name of Kilner, who developed something called Kilner goggles, I believe it was, that I don't know if these are still available or not, but they're basically used to help adjust the eyes before trying to view the aura, to help in that process until you are develop the ability to do it more spontaneously and individually. Yeah. So once you are able to feel the aura, view the aura, then you can best decide how you want to manipulate the aura. And this is where the argument came up in the Facebook group because of ethics. Is it permissible to manipulate someone else's aura? And to this I would say, this goes along the same ethics as doing spell work for someone. If they request you to, then yes. If you are given permission, either them requesting or you asking and them replying yes, then you can work with them. Very rarely would it be permissible to do any work on someone else's aura who is not aware of it or has not given permission. And in those rare instances, personally, I would say like maybe a life or death thing if the person is not capable of giving you permission, but you really think it may be the only thing that can help them in whatever they're suffering from. But this would be not a common case. All right, ethics declaration aside, working with the aura. This, to me, is very similar and I think crosses over the bounds of something like Reiki, energy healing, because that is exactly what you're doing. It's just a little bit different focus. Energy healing involves a bigger variety of energy. For example, working with the chakras, working with the body systems and where you feel blockages. It's not specifically contained to working with the aura, but the same principles can be applied to working with the aura. Meaning, you would scan the aura to find areas of distress, and you would use your energy to either, and actually no, if it's your energy it would be energy healing. Reiki would be the universal energy channeled through you. But however you do it, you would send energy then to try and repair whatever it is that you're viewing as blocked or broken. And that, in essence, is the summary of what I found and how I believe a person can go about working with the aura if that's what you really want to do. A couple of side notes or end notes, however you want to look at it, for additional study. I will mention that I did look at the information from the Farrars. Of course, I mentioned them. They do actually go into, aside from the information from Kilner, but they also go into how they are able to see disruptions in the aura. So that might be something to compare how you see these disruptions with how someone else sees them. I did also look at auras in general, that kind of information, and some additional sources, authors that you may be interested in looking at. C.W. Leadbeater was a 19th century theosophist and did publish some work based on energy in the aura. William Walker Atkinson, also turn of the century. Was this one turn of the century? This one may be a bit later. did publish works on, for example, the human aura, astral colors and thought forms, and then Kilner as described by the Farrars. All of these authors are a bit older. I don't have any contemporary resources for you. If anybody does have contemporary resources, I would be up to reading them as well. I just happen to find older stuff usually, but I know older works can sometimes be a challenge to read. They're written a lot more densely, they're written more academically, and in general are not always the most fun to read. But I find them interesting, so if you would like, there's more information for you there. And let me see if I've left anything out here. I had some information on aura, the chakra and colors. Western tradition, aura is associated with the astral body. And of course, the aura correlates with physical and mental well-being. Okay, so that was what I found. I just wanted to compile it all for you because I did promise some additional information on the aura, and it's not in-depth information by any means because the aura is not yet something that I have studied and probably is not the first thing on my to-do list for studying for a little bit. But do remember, if you want to work with the aura, be very clear, number one, on what the aura is. You have to understand what you're working with before you work with it. Next, learn to recognize it. If you want to work with something, you have to be able to recognize it, right? You have to feel it, have to see it, and have to kind of get to know it. Once that's done, then you can start actively trying to work with it via, I would say, energy work, energy healing, as the most, I don't want to say most obvious, but the most connected way of interacting, because the aura is an energy field. So I hope this was useful for you. Thank you very much for joining in, for watching the video, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.